Hi, everyone. Today I'm going to tell you a story that still leaves me speechless. A story about what should have been the happiest day of my life and how it turned into my worst nightmare. Because of someone I never imagined could hate me so much. My name's Carolina. I'm 28 years old, and 6 months ago I married the love of my life, Lucas. But what happened right after the ceremony? Well, that changed everything. It changed my marriage, it changed my relationship with my mother-in-law, and most importantly, it changed who I am. If you've been through something similar, or if you know someone who has a difficult mother-in-law, stay with me, because this story has twists you won't believe. Let's start from the beginning. Lucas and I met in college 7 years ago. He was shy, kind, funny, everything I ever wanted in a partner. We started dating in our sophomore year, and since then, we've been practically inseparable. But there's one important detail. His mother, Mrs. Margaret. From the first day I met her, I felt something strange. She greeted me with a cold smile, looked me up and down, and asked a question I'll never forget. "Do you really think you can take care of my son?" At the time, I laughed nervously and said something like, "I'll do my best." But that question, that tone, was already a warning. Over time, I realized that nothing I did was good enough for Mrs. Margaret. If I cooked for Lucas, she'd say her food was better. If I gave him a gift, she'd comment that I spent too much or chose wrong. If Lucas complimented me in front of her, she'd immediately change the subject. But I loved Lucas, and he always defended me, always stood by my side. So I swallowed everything and moved forward. When Lucas proposed to me 2 years ago, I was over the moon. He was perfect. He organized a surprise dinner, called our friends, and got down on one knee with a beautiful ring. It was magical. But when we told Mrs. Margaret, well, her reaction was cold. She hugged Lucas, completely ignored my hug, and said, "I hope you know what you're doing, son." That hurt, but I didn't let it ruin our moment. The wedding preparations were complicated. Mrs. Margaret wanted to control everything. The venue, the decoration, the menu, even the guest list. She said she had more experience and that I was too young to understand these things. Lucas tried to mediate, but I could tell he was tired too. He wanted his mother to be happy, but at the same time, he wanted me to be happy. And that created a tense atmosphere. The worst fight was over the dress. I had chosen a simple, elegant dress that was exactly my style. But Mrs. Margaret thought it was too plain and insisted I should wear her wedding dress, which had been stored away for over 30 years. Guys, the dress was horrible, full of ruffles, puffy sleeves, completely out of fashion. And worse, it had an impossible to ignore musty smell. I politely refused. I said I wanted to wear my dress, the one I chose, at my wedding. She was furious. She stormed out and didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. Lucas was caught in the middle. He tried to convince me to at least consider her dress, but I stood firm, and in the end, he supported me. I thought after that Mrs. Margaret would give up, but I was wrong. Very wrong. The wedding day arrived. It was at a beautiful farm with gardens, flowers everywhere, a rustic but elegant vibe, exactly as I had dreamed. I was nervous, of course, but also extremely happy. My dress was perfect. I felt like the most beautiful woman in the world. The ceremony was emotional. Lucas cried when he saw me walking in. I cried when he said his vows. It was perfect. Even Mrs. Margaret seemed to be behaving. She looked serious, but at least she didn't cause any scenes. The party was amazing. We danced, ate, laughed, enjoyed every second. I was so happy that I didn't even notice the look Mrs. Margaret gave me when I passed her by on the dance floor. A look. Cold. calculating. At the end of the night, Lucas and I said goodbye to everyone and went to the hotel room we had reserved. We were exhausted but happy. We fell asleep in each other's arms, dreaming about our honeymoon that would start the next day. The next day, we returned to the farm to pick up some things we had left there. Gifts, decoration, and of course, my wedding dress. I was anxious to put it away carefully. I was already thinking about how I would preserve it, maybe even pass it down to a daughter in the future. But when I opened the door to the room where I had gotten ready, my dress was on the floor, in pieces, torn, cut, destroyed. I froze. I couldn't process what I was seeing. Lucas came in behind me and was just as shocked as I was. "Carol, what happened?" I couldn't speak. I could only stare at the pieces of fabric on the floor. The dress I had chosen so carefully. The dress I wore on the most important day of my life. Destroyed. And then I heard a voice behind me. "Oh, you found it." It was Mrs. Margaret. She was standing in the doorway with a smile on her face. A cold smile. Cruel. I turned to her, trembling. Was it you?" She shrugged. "You never deserved it anyway. That dress was too plain for my son's wedding. I warned you that you should have worn mine." Lucas exploded. "Mom, what did you do?" But she didn't even blink. She looked me in the eyes and said, "You were never good enough for him, and you never will be." And she left. I collapsed. I sat on the floor, holding the pieces of my dress, and cried. I cried for hours. Lucas tried to console me, but he was in shock too. He went after his mother, but she had already left. When he called her, she hung up on him. When he texted her, she only replied, "She needs to learn her place." We canceled the honeymoon. There was no way to travel after that. I was emotionally destroyed, and Lucas was torn between supporting me and trying to understand why his mother did that. In the following days, I tried to process everything. I talked to my family, to friends, and everyone was horrified. My mother wanted to confront Mrs. Margaret personally. My father talked about calling the police, but I just wanted to understand. Why did she do this? Why did she hate me so much? Lucas tried to talk to her several times, but she refused to apologize. She insisted that I overreacted and that it was just a dress. Just a dress? That dress represented one of the most important days of my life. She knew that, and that's exactly why she destroyed it. I spent weeks dwelling on all of this, and then I decided to act. Not in the way you're thinking. I didn't go yell at her. I didn't destroy anything of hers, but I knew I needed to do something. Something that would show I wasn't going to accept being treated that way. First, I established a clear boundary. Mrs. Margaret was no longer welcome in our home. Lucas agreed. He was devastated by what his mother had done, and for the first time, he really saw who she was. Second, I started documenting everything. I took photos of the destroyed dress, saved her messages, and made a record of everything that happened. Why? Because I knew she would try to twist the story, and I wanted to have proof. Third, I told everyone, friends, family, acquaintances, not in a dramatic or vindictive way, but honestly. When someone asked, "How was the honeymoon?" I answered with the truth. And people's reactions were revealing. Many people who knew Mrs. Margaret weren't surprised. Apparently, she had done similar things before. Other daughters-in-law, other grandchildren, other situations. But no one had ever confronted her. Until I did. The news spread, and Mrs. Margaret's reputation began to crumble. People stopped inviting her to events. Her friends started to distance themselves. Even Lucas's own family started questioning her behavior. She tried to blame me. She said I was making up stories and that I was a liar, but the evidence was all there. The photos, the messages, the witnesses. And Lucas? He stood on my side, completely. He cut off contact with his mother for months. He said he would only talk to her again if she truly apologized to me. She never apologized. Today, 6 months later, my life is different. Lucas and I are stronger than ever. He learned to set boundaries with his family, and I learned that I don't have to accept disrespect from anyone, not even from my mother-in-law. Mrs. Margaret? She still hasn't apologized. She still thinks she's right. But now, she's alone, because the people around her finally saw who she really is. And the dress? I donated the pieces to an artist who works with fabric. She transformed those torn pieces into a beautiful work of art that now hangs in our living room. It's a reminder that even destroyed things can become something beautiful again. This is my story. And if you're going through something similar, I want you to know you don't have to accept disrespect. You don't have to swallow everything in silence. Set your boundaries. Protect your peace. And know that you deserve to be treated with dignity. Thanks for listening. If you liked this story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments, have you been through something like this? How did you handle it? Until next time, and remember, revenge isn't destruction. Revenge is living well, despite everything.